सुशोभित है धरा, जिनसे है मानव का पथ प्रकाश ज्योति से भरा। वंदना उनकी करे जिनसे सुशोभित है धरा, जिनसे है मानव का पथ प्रकाश ज्योति से भरा। जिनसे दिशा हमको मिली नित मानवीय मार्ग की, पथ मिला निश्चित हमें थी कामना जिस मार्ग की। कृतज्ञता से सौम्यता की नित्य आई निरंतरा, जिनसे है मानव का पथ प्रकाश ज्योति से भरा। वंदना उनकी करे जिनसे सुशोभित है धरा। जिनका है चिंतन शुभ यही, कैसे हो मानव सुखमयी। प्रेरणा से जिनकी है मानव का जीवन सुखमयी। श्रद्धा समर्पित जिनसे आए मानवीय परंपरा, जिनसे है मानव का पथ प्रकाश ज्योति से भरा। वंदना उनकी करे जिनसे सुशोभित है धरा। सबके सुख की कामना ले रहती जिनकी कल्पना, निकली जिनसे मानवीय पथ हेतु निश्चित योजना। पूजता उन हेतु जिनसे है सुसज्जित वसुंधरा, जिनसे है मानव का पथ प्रकाश ज्योति से भरा। वंदना उनकी करे जिनसे सुशोभित है धरा।
Namaste. So a very happy new year to all of you. May this year 2021 take you further on your journey towards a more resolved and prosperous life. Welcome to the session 4 of the English translation of Jeevan Vidya Ek Parichay. In the previous session, Jeevan Vidya had completed presentation till page 28 of the Hindi edition of the book. So we are using the 2017 edition of this book. Today we will do a few more of those pages again as a recap, and then read on till the end of first para of page 43 of the Hindi edition. Much of the book is self-explanatory, but I will add a few points at the end to emphasize or highlight the points that I feel need a little more elaboration or summarizing, which should help those who are newcomers. Okay, thank you very much. Jeevan Vidya. I have understood Jeevan, and it is from this point that the effort to make you understand begins. This process is called Jeevan Vidya. I want to first make it clear that every Jeevan has equal potential. What is Jeevan? Every human being wants to understand source of their consciousness and produce evidences of its presence. It is their fundamental objective. Jivan is neither material, physiochemical, nor is it non-material. Jivan is an atom, a constitutionally complete atom. Constitutional completeness means neither expulsion nor insertion of particles happens with this atom. However, atoms in physiochemical nature do undergo insertion and expulsion of particles, which leads to what we can call a result. The number of particles in an atom undergoes a change. That is the only change that happens in the nature. Nothing else changes. That is also the limit to the change that human being can bring about. That is, change in number of particles of atoms with evolving constitution. Such atoms are of two kinds. First, there are hungry atoms, and then secondly, there are glutted atoms. The atoms that have the hunger or need for additional particles in order to fulfill their constitution have been called as hungry atoms. The atoms wherein some particles tend to leave have been called as glutted atoms. In this way, the activity of both kinds of atoms is only for the sake of achieving fulfillment. The constitutionally complete atom can also be called the fulfilled atom. This constitutionally complete atom itself is the conscious unit or Jivan. It is called conscious unit because in it lies the power for fully evidencing intelligence and sensitivity. In the absence of Jivan, even if humans succeed in manufacturing a body artificially, they would not succeed even in evidencing sensitivity. Evidencing intelligence is a far cry. Human beings live and participate in the universal order only along the path which allows their evidencing of intelligence and sensitivity. That is all there is to it. All living beings of animal order evidence sensitivity. The human being, however, does not become fulfilled regardless of what they do until they have gotten evidence of their intelligence. As a human being, we must have happiness. In our pursuit of happiness, sometimes we think of becoming happy through luxury and possession, at other times through prayer and penance. All human effort in their history has been for happiness. Still, there is no evidence of anyone becoming fulfilled or having found happiness. It is in the same pursuit that I became successful in finding happiness through right understanding. I think every human being can become happy upon becoming wise. All human beings are one, that is united, when they are right, and they are many, that is fragmented, when they are wrong. To achieve this unity, there was a need to recognize that which is equally present in every human being, the thing which could become the holder and bearer of righteousness. That entity I understood to be Jivan. When Jivan lives with the right understanding, it evidences resolution everywhere. The human being is happy with resolution and miserable with problems. Jivan is the entity that understands while it is controlling a human body. Whatever level of training we bring about in animals, such as bull or cow or other animals, it is all based on their sensitivity. Now, how can one human being train another human being? No one could make anyone understand anything forcefully. One could remain controlled out of fear of livelihood for some time, but not forever. After some time, one casts that shield of fear aside. We have seen the end of slavery to be evidence of this in human history. Sensitivity-based design of human living has to have the use of fear and temptation. It is only on the basis of fear and temptation that all nations, all religions, all industrial establishments, and all commercial organizations claim to provide order to their people. However, in reality, neither fear nor temptation brings order to the human being, because neither fear nor temptation is acceptable to human being. Then what should be there in the human being so that they could be orderly? For this, the human being should have the way of recognizing values and doing evaluation. It is possible to realize the tradition of resolution with these two. The values and evaluation is manifestation of right understanding only. These are not bodily or mechanical activities. Modern science claims everything is machine-like and there is no such thing as value. Hence, it professes a machine-like life of struggle, of fear and temptation. This mechanistic worldview alone has brought humankind to the edge of their annihilation. A problem cannot be solved by bringing in another problem or by bringing in any number of problems. A problem gets cleared away only with resolution. There is no relief for human being in the absence of resolution. We need to develop a path towards humanistic order by way of values and evaluation. We will become successful if we build this order while keeping the Jeevan at the center, its relationships, its fulfillment, and its aims. Whatever systems we build while keeping the body at the center and ignoring Jeevan will only give rise to disorder. That which feels good to body is not always good. No bodily activity has continuity. The body activity has to change again and again, while activities of Jeevan have constancy. Therefore, we need the right understanding to take decisions based on Jeevan. Jeevan is there in the same way in every human being, and its powers are the same in every human being. Jeevan has inexhaustible powers and forces. Jeevan doesn't die or diminish. Why doesn't it diminish? The Jeevan atom doesn't ever undergo any sort of change in its constitution, so its powers and forces remain inexhaustible. Jeevan is a force by way of its being, that is existing, and it is a power by way of its motion. The evidence of its presence is in every human being's acceptance of constancy of their existence. Existence itself is presence. The study of any reality happens only in its presence. Jeevan is equally there in all human beings, and its forces and powers are the same in every human being. Lastly, happiness is the aim of every Jeevan, and the evidence of this is that all human beings want to become happy. This is the aim of all human beings. We need to keep these things in our mind. So, the Jeevan is a constitutionally complete atom. It is a conscious unit. Now the question arises, who created Jeevan? Confusion has remained so far on whether there is some creator and destroyer of existence. Human beings also think that they too can create and destroy. This is the basic premise of modern science. The idea that we could create or destroy something has caused great deal of frustration in humankind. Some nations say that they can make the atom bomb, while some say that they can't. Therefore, the idea of equality between nations has no bearing. Equality actually regards the way things naturally are in existence. Existence is naturally in the way of coexistence. If we do anything unnatural, then it must face resistance from somewhere or other. Business got reduced to profit mania by the same kind of thinking, never seeing equality, always seeing in terms of less and more instead. One person thinks something is worth less, while the other think it is worth more, and then they keep on fighting. This thinking could never anywhere result in a healthy and happy human living. Therefore, in order to lead a healthy and happy life, the human being will have to live with values and evaluation. The first step of that is right understanding. The second step is honesty. The third step is responsibility. And the fourth step is participation. Human beings have to evidence themselves in these four steps. The content of this understanding is under three headings: knowledge of Jeevan, knowledge of the vision of existence, and knowledge of humane conduct. Jeevan is eternal, aspires for happiness, and can only evidence happiness in the human tradition. The first step for that is to understand Jeevan, and this step is called Jeevan Vidya. Jeevan is the holder and bearer of knowledge. There are three aspects to it: the knowledge, the learning, and the learned. Knowledge is an integral aspect of the whole existence. Jeevan too is an integral, inseparable part of existence. Learning happens in Jeevan. The learned one is the human being. What is the content of right understanding? The entire existence in the form of coexistence is meant to be understood. This itself is knowledge. The holder and bearer of learning is Jeevan, and the one who evidences it is human being. The human being is a combined expression of Jeevan and body. In this way, we become clear about the significance of the human being, the significance of Jeevan, and the significance of coexistence. Coexistence is the way existence manifests. Development is the way coexistence manifests. Jeevan is the way development manifests. Awakening is the way Jeevan manifests. For this, coexistence itself is the seen and Jeevan itself is the seer. The composition and decomposition activities in the physiochemical world are interrelated and that have an eternal presence. You will not find any point of time ever when there was no change taking place in the physiochemical nature. It is Jeevan who is the seer or witness to all these composition and decomposition activities. The entity that sees and understands is Jeevan. The body does not understand anything. The part of body which is not being made alive by Jeevan becomes numb, and there is no sense of hot or cold there. Another example, during surgery, under anesthesia, one gets no sense of pain from cutting and stitching of body. Sensory perception happens only in those parts of body which Jeevan keeps alive. Jeevan becomes the seeker of truth, reality, and meaningfulness only when it becomes eager for knowledge for its own fulfillment. This understanding of truth, reality, and meaningfulness itself becomes the basis of Jeevan's fulfillment. This is why we need to understand Jeevan, and this need to understand is there in the rich as well as the poor, in the strong as well as the weak, in the elders as well as the young. We get another formula from seeing the principle of equality in coexistence. Jeevan Vidya is without the sentiment of class struggle. It has the basis of universal good. It encompasses the source of well-being and the continuity of happiness. It has the evidence of resolution. All these things arise with right understanding. In my view, every human being wants this very knowledge, and they want to live in accordance with this only. We can live happily only when we are with everyone. The principle here is that no one is alone. No human being can become happy after leaving their relationship with earth. No human being can become happy after leaving their relationship with water. If you cannot become happy by leaving out the relationship with material things, how can you become happy by leaving out the relationship of Jeevan? How can human being become like a machine, bereft of any feelings? Just imagine. How can this happen? When we go to the market, we ask about the value of each and everything, vegetables, grains, gold, etc. Who is the seer of that value? Clearly, it is the human being. If everything has value, then the human being should also have value. But the value of the human being has not yet been discovered by us. We know the value of everything else apart from that. We value only those things where there is possibility of profit. While if we understood value of human being, then we will become liberated from profit and loss. It is when we become capable of right understanding the human values, the Jeevan values, the established values, and the noble values that the need for profit and loss itself disappears. Such a huge burden can be taken off the chest of the world. The system of profit and loss is a vicious cycle that spares no one. One doesn't hesitate in even sacrificing one's family members for the sake of profit. The human being can come out of this trap only if they become capable of understanding the values. It is not going to happen before that. Human beings have tried many different things, but to no avail. It is evident in the history of communism and capitalism. Communism, while negating the profit-based economy, in the end fought for national profit, and thus it could not become free from profit as an idea. Capitalism is profitism by declaration. Therefore, human being needs to understand their own value in order to become free from profit and loss. How will this come about? The value of human being is realized upon understanding Jeevan, upon understanding existence in the form of coexistence, and upon becoming confident in humane conduct. This itself is called the right understanding. It is when we start living in accordance with human values that we become capable of doing what is right. Until then, we are caught up in one obsession or another, and we don't succeed in doing the right. We need to understand Jeevan and coexistence in order to become wise. This itself is Jeevan Vidya. Vidya has two aspects: knowledge of Jeevan and the knowledge of the vision of coexistence. Jeevan is the holder and bearer of these both. The process of Jeevan's understanding itself has been called the knowledge of Jeevan. The process of Jeevan's understanding the existence has been called the vision of existence. All Jeevans are equal, and Jeevan is there in the same way in all human beings. What is the nature of this equality? When we understand the way Jeevan knows itself, the way it evidences knowledge, and the way it understands existence, and the way it evidences coexistential orderliness in human living, it becomes clear that all Jeevans are equal. There is no provision of understanding in any part of body, such as hands, legs, ears, nose, eyes, brain, or heart. This provision is only in Jeevan. Jeevan is the entity which understands Jeevan, and it is Jeevan only that understands existence. There is nothing else that will understand. Therefore, we can conclude that the combined form of body and Jeevan has to be there to express or evidence the understanding. It would not happen with just body, nor would it happen with just Jeevan. The focal point of evidence regards the human being's embodiment of orderly living and their participation in the universal order, which itself is the purpose of right understanding. All of us naturally want to live in the universal order, and this intent is intrinsic to Jeevan. The right understanding is not an imposition. In course of understanding existence, it becomes clear that existence itself is coexistence, because nature saturated, which is immersed, imbued and surrounded in the omnipotence itself is the existence. Nature is in the form of entities that can be counted. The one who does the counting is the human being. The countable entities include all sentient and insentient nature. There is one small formula. Right understanding results in happiness, while wrong understanding results in suffering. Human history is nothing but a story of struggle in their pursuit of happiness. So far, the whole world has kept on struggling with the idea that happiness could be achieved by doing penance or by doing yoga or by renouncing the world. People have tried these things as well, but they have found no evidence which could result in the tradition of happiness. Next, they struggled with the idea of achieving happiness by amassing a lot of possessions. This too didn't result in lasting happiness. No one has been able to achieve lasting happiness from any of these two ideas, so it was time to rethink. In course of rethinking, the solution emerged that happiness arises from right understanding. The right has to happen in the purview of right understanding. Human beings are one, that is united when they are in the right, and they are many, which is fragmented when they are in the wrong. It is not possible for you to agree with my wrong, nor is it possible for me to agree with your wrong. That which is wrong is as wrong for you as it is for me. We are one, that is united in the right. This I understood. Our well-being becomes assured only via right understanding. It is only from the right understanding that we can become happy and prosperous. It is only with the right understanding that we can live orderly in the present. It is only with the right understanding that we can evidence coexistence. There are 4 stages of evidencing happiness: resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistential orderliness. On the other side, happiness is only completely realized when these 4 become evident in human living. Until these 4 stages come to fruition, we keep trying. We have tried performing all sorts of acts such as chanting, penance, worship, recitation of scriptures, yoga, meditation, etc. We have tried amassing a lot of possessions as well. Even still, it didn't result in the way to everyone's happiness. Right understanding is required by every human being in order for them to become happy. The right understanding can be taken to every human being. The first step to the right understanding is about understanding existence. Existence is in 4 orders. The first is material orders, that is soils, stones, gems and metals. These already evidence definite conduct. The second order is the bio order, which includes all trees, plants, vegetation and medicinal plants, and these two are evident with their respective definite conducts. The third order is the animal order, which is comprised of sentient beings other than human beings, that is animals, birds, etc. These two evidence order according to their respective essences. The fourth is the knowledge order, within which only the human being is there, who is still awaited to evidence orderliness. Now think for yourself. The most developed order is lagging behind all others. What does this mean? It's no wonder that human beings are suffering. The human being's conduct also needs to be in accordance with their stage of development. Each entity in existence gives evidence of belonging to its respective order in the form of its conduct. The human being will also have to evidence its order in the form of its conduct. This is the formula we get, and all of us will have to verify this formula in our living. In the process of doing this verification, we first try to understand the entity within us that actually understands. After this, we understand the entity that manifests that understanding. Thereafter, we understand what we achieve by this understanding. This is the full potential of the human being. Human being is countable in knowledge order. What is the basis for considering human being in knowledge order? Human being works and behaves according to what they believe that they have understood. Even without knowing, every human being has the capacity of believing. One doesn't know and only believes, but in conversations one makes claims of knowing. This is a contradiction. Every human being in delusion has this contradiction. As most human beings on earth have been living with this fundamental flaw, it has given rise to all kinds of problems and frustrations. We now want to be liberated from all these problems and frustrations. The whole Jeevan Vidya program is aiming to accomplish that. It is only human being among the four orders of nature who cannot become happy without understanding, without becoming resolved. Material order is regulated by way of constitution inheritance. Bio order is regulated by way of seed inheritance. Animal order is regulated by way of species inheritance. The evidence of regulation is in the form of orderly conduct. Apart from human being, every unit in existence exhibits definite and orderly conduct. The need for definite conduct is there in the human being as well. Human being becomes regulated by way of sanskar inheritance. What is sanskar? Sanskar is conclusive acceptance of right understanding. Right understanding becomes evident in the form of humane conduct. When human being achieves understanding, then their living becomes orderly and their conduct becomes humane. In the absence of this capability of orderly living, their conduct is called inhumane. This is the demarcation between humane and inhumane conduct. Now we can decide, do we need humane conduct or not? We naturally look for what we need, and our innate need for humane conduct itself is the link for our awakening. Jeevan is neither born nor does it die. It is only the body that gets formed and deformed. Jeevan wants to control human body in order to seek happiness, which is different from the way it is in animals. All animals only exhibit wanting to live with species inheritance. Human beings want to live with happiness and then suffer when they try living like animals. That is all there is to it. We need to understand and evidence this understanding. The understanding is meant only for evidencing. When I make others understand upon my having understood from you, only then you get the evidence of your understanding. This is the way the understanding flows into human tradition from generation to generation. Wrong understanding cannot flow into tradition. Wrong understanding doesn't get transferred to the next generation. The content of right understanding would have no variation from generation to generation. The variation in the understanding across generations would only be in its expression. The tradition of right understanding shall become stronger and more precise with every subsequent generation. With every new generation, it will become easier to do what is right. All human beings have this need. The wise human beings find contentment only upon transferring their understanding to the next generation, and the next generation can become contented only by this way only. The human being is a unit of order that is based on sanskar inheritance. Sanskar is the right understanding itself. Since wrongs are not acceptable to anyone, these don't qualify to be as sanskar. No one accepts the wrongs, but one only remains trapped in them. One may have committed thousands of wrongs. Even then, these wrongs remain unacceptable to oneself. Since a wrong is not acceptable to anyone, no one offers it to their next generation. That is how a wrong understanding does not take the form of human tradition. The right understanding alone can flow into the human tradition. Equality among human beings is the reference for the right understanding. The reference for equality among human beings is Jeevan. Every Jeevan is equal in terms of constitutional completeness and its inexhaustible forces and powers. My conscious powers of wanting, thinking, desiring, or conviction remain undiminished regardless of how much I use them. It would not have been possible for Jeevan to have inexhaustible forces and powers if it were not free from constitutional transformation. One could come to accept the concept of constitutional completeness by this logic as well. How can one verify that one has attained the right understanding or not? The verification of understanding is in one's behavior, work, and orderliness in living. I scrutinized my own work and behavior dozens of times and found myself to be living in the form of harmonious order. However, the universal order has not yet materialized in human tradition. My orderly living is reconfirmation of my having the coexistential realization. This realization continues to become stronger in course of my life. This is living based on realization. Therefore, we can conclude that every human being, upon attaining the right understanding, that is sanskar inheritance, evidences orderliness based on realization. This orderliness in the animal world is by species inheritance, the plant world by seed inheritance, and the mineral world by constitution inheritance. The right understanding is definite, and Jeevan, as the bearer and holder of understanding, is definite. Therefore, the evidence of right understanding is also definite. Jeevan itself becomes wise. Jeevan is the entity that understands, while the evidence of right understanding happens only in the human tradition. Only human body has the fully developed brain which is needed for expressing the right understanding. The evidence of right understanding will not be found in any animal species. Coexistence encompasses complementariness, evolution, development progression, development, and awakening. Only human being has the means for understanding all these concepts. The capacity for understanding is there in human being only. The crux of understanding existence is to realize that existence consists of nature saturated in omnipotence. These two realities, nature and omnipotence, are found to be thoroughly intertwined, eternally inseparable, always manifest, and ever present. There is no method of separating nature from the omnipresent reality. There is no reason for separating these, nor is their separation possible. There is no point in imagining that which has no basis in existence. One can understand and evidence only that which has presence in existence. Existence itself is manifest in the form of the four orders. If we don't become capable of evidencing the right understanding, then we will neither succeed in living orderly in family nor in society. We suffer on all fronts only due to our lack of right understanding. The human population on this earth has surpassed 7 billion, but we are still not orderly in our living. Increase or decrease in population has nothing to do with human understanding. The purpose of human tradition is resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, that is trust, and coexistential orderliness. We can evidence mutual complementariness by understanding the way of being in coexistence. We can evidence our capacity to trust by understanding the way of living fearlessly. We evidence production more than our family's needs by understanding the way of living prosperously. We become capable of living with justice only when we have become resolved. None of the human endeavors thus far in the realms of idealism and materialism have succeeded in achieving the right understanding. The root cause of this is their not being able to understand that existence is in the form of coexistence. The living tradition of right understanding could not establish until now because somewhere we humans made errors in understanding existence. How could a human being learn orderly living when its tradition itself has not materialized? Therefore, the manner of living judiciously with other human beings and of living in a balanced and lawful way with the rest of nature, that is the animal, plant and mineral world, could not happen. Alongside, humankind kept on degrading the earth's environment. The human being could not find justice anywhere. When Chief Justices of Supreme Court of India were asked about it, they said, "We don't do justice, we only pass judgment." If the judiciary doesn't know justice, why do they call their offices courts of justice? The same courts command us to speak truth. Where can you find truth in these courts? In the same way, the executive doesn't do anything apart from uncovering wrongdoings and then attempting to stop one such wrongdoings by committing another. All government workers are deployed to this end. The right understanding is fundamental for human awakening. If every human being attains it, then humankind shall be able to live with justice. Living with justice results in resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistential orderliness. Without justice, none of these things will come about. Therefore, justice is the backbone of humanness. The evidence of justice first happens in the family, then in the society, then on the whole earth. To live with justice means that the human being leads a fulfilled, happy, and resolved life, with ever-increasing trust in the ever-presence of existence, while continuously refining their behavior. All of these things, which they used to say one would get upon earning great deal of virtue, become suddenly available upon living with justice. I now understand that meaning of virtue is to attain the right understanding. A human being naturally begins evidencing their potential, ability, and worthiness in the tradition of right understanding. Potential is the activity of bearing. What does a human being bear? The human being is either a bearer of delusion or of awakening. When a human being becomes awakened, then their delusion vanishes on its own. Human being is a unit of sanskar inheritance order. Right understanding or delusion is inherited only from the tradition. If it is the tradition of right understanding, then its traits gets inducted in the childhood itself. Thereafter, one becomes liberated from delusion after attaining right understanding with own effort and from benefaction of others. Liberation from delusion means program of living with Jeevan's awakening. Whatever education we have got from the conventional traditional, it is for living with body as the reference. This underlying assumption is evident in the conventional education, which builds obsession for profit, sex, and consumption. While in reality, the human being is fundamentally different from animals. Basic tendencies of human being are different from those of animals. The human being is a multi-dimensional expression because of Jeevan and thereby wants resolution, while no animal wants resolution. The human being wants prosperity, while no animal wants prosperity. No animal has any hoarding tendency. Ants don't hoard with the aim of possession, They collect things by force of habit of their species. The human being in delusion has the willful tendency of luxury and possession because of their lust for ever more sensory gratification. We have made luxury and possession our aim in life instead of resolution and prosperity, and our perspective has remained limited to seeking likeness or pleasing to senses, health, and profit. This has resulted in our suffering, struggling, and becoming oppressed. The only way out of this difficulty is by understanding Jeevan, existence, and humane conduct. The human being is the most developed unit in existence, both in terms of Jeevan and in terms of body. Jeevan uses the body as an instrument for the purpose of evidencing its own existence and its awakening. Jeevan controls and keeps the body alive, but comes into delusion upon becoming identified with body. Eventually, it has to take another birth in order to fulfill its purpose of evidencing itself. It is naturally troublesome for Jeevan to leave the body again and again without becoming successful in evidencing itself. It is not about virtue or sin, it is about right or wrong understanding. Understanding is inherited only from tradition. Therefore, right understanding has to become established in the tradition. Any one individual's achieving right understanding doesn't mean that the whole world got emancipated. Such ideas only make us fearful and timid. Every human being in the purview of humane conduct can live with righteous wealth, conjugal faithfulness, and kindness in work and behavior. Living in this way also leads to good use and protection of our body, mind, and wealth. And when these two are established, then justice as relationship, evaluation, and mutual fulfillment becomes self-evident. In this way, humane conduct gets described in the form of values, character, and ethics. The good use and protection of resources as body, mind, and wealth itself is ethics. The values are fulfilled only by way of our recognizing the relationships in coexistence. When a person recognizes their relationship with their father or mother or teacher in the sense of coexistential orderliness, then the associated feelings arise on their own and the values are fulfilled. Where the relationship is not recognized, there is no flow of values. For example, a lone passenger sitting in a railway compartment might instinctively stretch out upon seeing a stranger, wanting that no one should sit there. After some time, if any acquainted comes over, then the same person might readily stand up and even offer their own seat. Therefore, recognizing how others are related to us is very important. The study of relationships happens based on their purpose. For example, relationship with mother is based primarily on the purpose of nurturing. The relationship of father with father is based primarily on the purpose of protection. Human beings can do no wrong once they have recognized all their relationships, while in the absence of recognizing relationships, they are bound to make mistakes. If we observe the present systems of state and religion, we discover that all these systems are designed for dealing with the criminals. Both state and religion are busy in trying to reform the criminals using their own respective methods. None of these systems could provide the right understanding to the human being. Every human being wants to become wise and honest, but these systems have not been able to show the way of living honestly. Every human being wants to become responsible, but these systems could not establish the tradition of purposeful and responsible living. People have wished for good, and they have been saying that we should pursue the good of all, that everyone should have a family, etc. Everybody repeats these slogans. However, Just saying these things and repeating these slogans doesn't provide any real path for achieving it. In the same book where it is written that we should have good for all, later it is written this whole world is false and the God is the real father or mother who is our only refuge. No good came from such utterances. Who benefited after one had gone to the real father or mother? This whole approach is purposeless. Human being finds purpose only upon becoming wise. Purpose is innate in all relationships. What is that purpose? The universal human purpose is to accomplish resolution, prosperity, trust, and coexistential orderliness. The purpose of all relationships is intertwined with this, and if human beings can connect with this, then the universal tradition of humankind will result. Only right understanding can take the form of universal tradition. Wrong understanding would never become universal tradition. This is why we don't have a universal tradition yet on this earth. The outputs of present educational systems think that they are the most intelligent, while others are fools. Millions of such graduates are being churned out every year. How can we make each one of those graduates wise? How shall we find so many doctors to fix them? Without understanding something, one cannot accept it for living. My own case can illustrate this point. My family, my neighbors, my whole village were full of Vedic scholars, but they could not make me study in school because I had no interest in it. However, every human being on this earth wants to become wise. On this basis, I say there is most definitely the possibility that every human being can become wise. I started this movement only after observing this tendency towards understanding in the human being. The goal of this movement is to make every human being on this earth wise. As a result of the efforts thus far, those who have attained the understanding have found relief, and such qualities have arisen in them which we can call humane. The essence of ethics is devoting one's resources, that is body, mind and wealth, for the sake of human purpose. This is also called as good use. Good use occurs in two situations, one for the production and seva, and second for fulfilling the innate purpose of relationships. That which is put to good use becomes protected, and that for which the good use was done also becomes protected. This is the meaning of protection and good use. When we use our resources in the form of body, mind and wealth for universal human purpose of resolution, prosperity, fearlessness and coexistential orderliness, those resources become protected. There is no protection without good use, and there is no good use without protection. Protection combined with good use results in eternal good. There is a need in us human beings to devote our body, mind and wealth towards righteousness for the sake of our awakening. If there is a unit in existence that could be wise, then that is human being. The human being is a combined expression of Jeevan and body. The body is hereditary, while Jeevan is in the form of constitutionally complete atom that exists naturally and without any human contribution. The human body is the contribution of human tradition. The union of Jeevan and human body is only for the purpose of evidencing awakening. There is no mode provision for evidencing Jeevan's awakening through animal bodies. Therefore, we can understand that human being is a unit of sanskar inheritance order. The orders in nature apart from human being are mutually complementary. Now the need has come for human being to become complementary to these orders. Orderly living is only possible for human beings in the form of complementariness, which cannot result from individualism or consumerism. Idealism and materialism, as the prior lines of human thinking resulted in making the human being individualistic. Materialism results in human beings becoming consumerist and thereby individualistic. On the other hand, the one who is pursuing idealistic detachment is necessarily individualistic. In this way, both thoughts, idealism and materialism, could not give a formula for the formation of society, and instead these proved to be against it. The truth, however, is that every human being wants to live as a part of society. They want to live with prosperity. They want to live resolved lives. It is the human being's responsibility to fulfill their inherent purpose of resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistence. The responsibility naturally follows the right understanding. As we take to responsible living, we naturally become orderly in family and thereby become social. As a result, we evidence universal conduct of human being. Humankind needs such a magnificent tradition. Every human being has the want of orderliness. It is there in each and every human being as an aspiration as well. I think the human being has its desire as well, but this desire is lower in priority than many other desires. This desire, not being strong enough, does not turn into action, and as a result, one remains incapable of committing to it. Human being becomes helpless due to animal consciousness. Therefore, what should be done? We should make those people proficient who are ready to understand right now, and through them implement humanistic education in the educational institutions and instill sanskar in children. As sanskar gets instilled in children, their homes and families will naturally undergo a transformation. This exemplifies the need for humanization of education, which is the second plan. The units of material order, bio order, and animal order are complementary to human being. Humankind, however, is undecided as of yet with regard to the question of whether to become complementary to other orders of nature. This gap needs to be filled, as only then will we get the evidence of human beings living in the universal orderliness of existence. The aims of Jeevan are happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss. When Jeevan's aims are accomplished, then the human being's aims are also accomplished. The aims of human being are resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistential orderliness. When the human being's aims are accomplished, Jeevan's aims are also accomplished. Resolution equals happiness. We experience happiness wherever we have become resolved, and we suffer wherever we are unresolved. Thereafter, as we live in family while evidencing resolution and prosperity, we experience peace. We experience contentment upon living in the orderliness. We experience bliss upon evidencing right understanding. In this way, we can produce evidences of resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistential orderliness. Then the right understanding will keep flowing into the human tradition, and we will experience happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss. Jeevan has inexhaustible forces and powers. Therefore, upon its accomplishing resolution, Jeevan keeps expressing and evidencing resolution in human living, and it remains in the state of fulfillment. Jeevan is a force in the state of being, and it is a power in the state of motion. The Jeevan activities in the state of motion become evidenced in the mutuality of one another, while the realization happens in their state of being. As we taste, we realize whether or not we became fulfilled from it. As we evaluate, we realize whether or not we discovered the truth from it. Further on, we realize upon direct perception of truth and contemplate based on understanding or the both from that realization. The truth thus discovers discovered becomes the basis of our scrutinizing self for its purpose. This self-scrutiny has to be done. There is no other way. Fulfillment at these 5 levels of Jeevan itself is the way to lasting happiness, which is also called as happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss. This fulfillment in Jeevan at its 5 levels itself becomes evident as self-governance in human living. Self-governance is the embodiment of magnificence of the human being upon their realization of humanness. Self-governance is orderly living of humankind in a self-inspired way. Humane conduct itself is the embodiment of self-governance. The magnificence of human awakening is in making their relationships meaningful and realizing values in family, society, nature, and human-made systems. We can come to trust in the ever-presence of existence only while making our relationships meaningful and experiencing the values therein. We can't live in the ever-presence of existence until we recognize purpose or meaning in our relationships. Unable to see our relationships, we do not live in the ever-presence of existence. We go to the past, but the past has no presence. One cannot live in the past. We think of the future, but the future has no presence either. In this way, human being doesn't find any anchor in life and keeps wandering listlessly. No one wants to wander listlessly, but the current fragmented traditions do not have any provision for showing the direction or goal to human being. Every human being, upon achieving the right understanding from consciousness development, value education, can become living evidence of truth and be part of its tradition. The right understanding can come into every human being's conduct, which is the essence of humanness. The magnificence of human being arises only when they evidence the right understanding in their conduct. It is with this greatness that human beings can make their tradition with continuity of happiness. Humans can achieve balance in their way of living with animal world, plant world, and mineral world, making their use and good use while being grateful for their complementariness. Every human being can become imbued with purpose upon the onset of right understanding. In order to live harmoniously with other human beings, one must recognize purpose in their relationships, fulfill the values therein, perform evaluation, and experience mutual fulfillment. Fulfillment is our natural preference. It is in the hope of fulfillment that human being moves towards evidencing resolution, prosperity, and trust in the ever-presence of existence and coexistential orderliness in their lives. Existence itself is the highest truth. Existence itself is eternal. Existence is in the form of coexistence. Coexistence is always in effect, and this results in development, progression, and development, and the expression of consciousness thereafter. The atoms in development progression exhibit continuous activity while they remain parts of physiochemical things. The number of Jeevan atoms is determined by way of existential orderliness. The human being has no role in deciding that. The 4 orders in existence have come into being in the same way. The human being have failed to evidence complementariness to rest of the nature and instead have only been exploiting it. How can the human being imagine their happiness arising out of exploitation of nature? All nations, all sects, all religions, all families believe that their happiness is achievable from exploitation of nature. Science too propagates the idea that human beings can preserve their lot only through struggle and exploitation, offering up slogans like might is right and survival of the fittest. A nation is considered developed if it can wage more wars, make more profit, or exploit nature to greater degree. In reality, a developed nation is that which has become awakened and orderly and resolved and prosperous and self-assured, and that has become aligned with the coexistential orderliness. There is a difference in the way the Jivan understands itself and the way it understands existence. We recognize material things by experimenting with them and with regard to their usefulness. Usefulness is in terms of human needs and aspirations. The human needs are objects of food, shelter, and utilities. The human aspirations are objects of transportation and telecommunication. Most of these things have been identified, their production has been figured out, and these have mostly become accessible to everyone, albeit with for profit, through commerce. The commerce is always in anticipation of profit. So we will stop here in terms of the reading and begin with the continue this in the next session. Thank you very much. Hello again. So we just finished reading the chapter portion of session 4. So now I will begin summarizing or highlighting certain points of the propositions that were made in this session. The first thing that was done was a proposition that Jivan, consciousness, is a kind of an atom. So it's a fulfilled atom or a constitutionally complete atom. So it says that at the base of the expression of consciousnness, there is a conscious unit which is part of nature, and it is, and like everything as part of nature, it is made of atoms, and consciousness is essentially expression of Jivan, which is a constitutionally complete atom, the thing which is responsible for giving rise to thought, desires, understanding, and realization. Okay, so second thing that it basically makes a proposition that there is a universal demarcation of right and wrong. So it's not right and wrong is not a matter of perception. It is there is an absolute right and absolute wrong, and one can actually come to understand what is right and what is wrong, and it is a matter of education. And it also makes the bold claim that human beings are one and united when they are in the right, and they are many and divided when they are in the wrong. So basically it is also as a third proposition that it is making is that this existence is the base of all understanding, and there is such a thing as right understanding, and as long as the person is not into that right understanding, they are in the wrong understanding, and in the wrong understanding they feel miserable, they are confronted with problems at every step. And when they come to the right understanding, that basically becomes the basis of resolution in their thoughts and justice in their behavior. So the right understanding, or samajh in Hindi, which is called, is the central point for the entire presentation of Madhyas Darshan. It also, fourth point that it basically makes is that consciousness is a combined expression of sensitivity and intelligence. Okay, so it is in Hindi it is called samvedanshilta and sangyanshilta. So sensitivity and intelligence. So it is combination of the two. And sensitivity is the aspect which basically links with the body, and intelligence is the aspect which is of knowing and believing, which is entirely within the purview of Jivan. So what it basically says is that consciousness is a combined form of that, and human being is primarily an intelligence based order in the nature. So therefore they have the need to acquire fulfillment of their intelligence, and then evidence that intelligence in their living, or to give evidence of of their intelligence. While the sensitivity based living is becomes evident in the animal world itself, the intelligence based living becomes evident in the humankind once they become uh, awakened. So Madhya's darshan is about understanding necessary for awakened living, which it position is the destiny of existence and the destiny of humankind. So then it talks of the values and evaluation, the mulya and mulyankan, mulya or mulyankan. So everything in nature has value, including human being, and the right understanding is to know those values and be established in the reference for doing the right evaluation. So right evaluation, having the understanding of values and being the reference, having the reference within oneself for doing the correct evaluation is about awakened living. So it basically gives the, so as a sixth point of this summary is we talk about the content of right understanding, which is put under three headings: knowledge of vision of coexistence, which is Sahastitva Darshan Gyan, and second is the knowledge of Jeevan, about the conscious unit or the Jeevan Gyan. And with these two knowledge, that is the knowledge of coexistence and knowledge of Jeevan, it begets the knowledge of humane conduct, that is the Manvyatapun Acharan Gyan. So this, he says, is the essential knowledge is under these three headings. It further talks of the four orders of nature. So there is again and again this word order comes. So it is, order is to basically indicate, I've used that word as order or orderliness to indicate what in Hindi it has been used, the word vyavastha, or the natural scheme of things, the way the nature organizes itself. So it is the four orders of the nature have been identified as the material order, bio order, animal order, and knowledge order, which is padarthavastha, pranavastha, jivavastha, and jnanavastha. So human being is identified as part of knowledge order, which is fundamentally distinct from the animals. So human being is not an animal in this proposition, and it is an entirely different order that has emerged. Okay, so therefore describing human being like an animal would be a mistake, that it makes a proposition that human being expresses the intelligence, which is the aspect of knowing and believing and acquiring the right understanding, so which is something which is possible in human being only and not in animals at all. So making them totally distinct kind of order of nature. And human being, until they acquire the intelligence for living like a human being ought to, so they would live like animals, and that is what is proposition as the animal consciousness. Then this section also talked about Manvyatapun Acharan, or the humane conduct, and it has been put under three headings as values, character, and ethics, mulya, charitra, or naitikta. So this is how, so values at the level of family, and character at the level of society, and ethics at the level of the state or the systems in which the human being lives. Okay. There is another word that has been used here called sanskar. Okay, sanskar is the impressions that one has. So it is an impression as the conclusive acceptance of the right understanding. Okay, so this is this he says that human being is a unit of knowledge order, and for them the sanskar is the essence. And the way each order has its way of continuity of its kind, the way a generation of it repeats what its predecessors did as inheritance, or in Hindi the word is used as anushangiyata. So that is how, so he says that human being is a sanskar inheritance unit. So they basically inherit the sanskar from their previous generation. So as part of the body, that is nature, but in terms of their mind, in terms of their understanding, it is entirely nurture. Okay, so this is something that has been said here. So each order has its own kind of inheritance or anushangiyata. Material order has result inheritance, bio order or pranavastha has seed inheritance, animal order has species inheritance, and knowledge order has sanskar inheritance. So sanskar is the word which we keep hearing again and again, and it is basically about the right understanding. So it is not just the impressions on the mind, or the which is basically the surface of consciousness, but it is the conclusive acceptance of understanding. So as we had, some of us are familiar with Jeevan, and we will be talking about more in the subsequent sections of it. So there are 5 levels of Jeevan: Man, Vritti, Chitta, Buddhi and Atma. So sanskar basically goes right up till the Buddhi, so which is where the conclusive acceptance of right understanding actually happens. So I hope you will go through the text that I presented here, and those of you who know Hindi, I hope they will get inspired to read the original version in Hindi as well. So I hope you found this session useful. We will meet next Saturday, same time. Namaste.